Man, I love hanging out in the foyer and seeing faces before service starts. I get to see old friends and young families. So let me say welcome. Glad you're here. I love watching you walk in and sharing a couple of words with you. Those of you who are watching us online as well, glad you've joined us too. We have a lot to be proud of today. Independence Day, I hope you enjoyed your Independence Day. And I heard recently a new poll indicates that something like a 15% increase in people proud to call this country home. And outside of political discussions, I'm just glad to hear that. I just think it's wonderful. Now, more than that, here at Rappahannock, we are smack dab between mission trips this morning, both domestic and foreign. So I just want to take a moment. If you just returned from building houses in Mexico and preaching and singing and testifying, or you're preparing to go and work with the folks at Standing Rock in the Dakotas, either one of those, one just came back, one's getting ready to leave, would you stand if you're a part of either one of those groups? Good stuff. Good stuff. Thank you, guys. So to everybody here, I apologize for telling you this joke that you probably heard me tell several years ago, but number one, you're used to that. And number two, it's my absolute favorite joke on this topic. Driving on back roads through the hills of West Virginia, a guy sees a sign. The sign says, "Talking dog for sale." The guy kind of giggles, but he's intrigued, and so just for laughs, he pulls into the driveway and drives down this long driveway into this little shack in the woods. And this dude walks out of the little shack. He's barefoot, no shirt, pair of bib overalls, only one gallus buttoned. Driver says, "You really got a talking dog for sale?" Dude says, "Yep. He's in the backyard." Driver walks into the backyard alone, and there's this big old black lab sleeping in the sun, a little bit gray around the muzzle. Guy looks around the yard feeling kind of silly, but finally, low under his breath, he says, "You the talking dog?" Dog says, "Yep." Well, the guy is stunned. He says, "You really talk?" He says, "This is incredible. What's your story?" Dog says, "Simple story, really." Said, "I figured out I could talk when I was just a pup. A local sheriff heard about it, and he had some connections, so they sent me out to Dulles Airport to work security. It was my job to just look for suspicious characters, walk around the concourse, listen to conversations, and report back." He said, "In my career, I prevented 9 bombings and identified 6 people who were on the terrorist watch list." He said, "While I was out at Dulles, the Secret Service heard about me, and they assigned me to travel with the president when he was out meeting with world leaders. When the president would leave the room during the negotiations, I'd pretend to be asleep under the table. And the foreign dignitaries would start whispering all sorts of secrets, and they'd give away what their real intentions were. I reported back directly to the president." He said, "We never got the short end of a deal when I was on duty because I knew what was really going on." He said, "I've been issued many commendations, even received the Presidential Medal of Freedom." The man is listening to the dog, spellbound. He says, "This is unbelievable." He said, "But how did you end up way out here?" Dog said, "I don't know. I just got burned out, I guess. Retired, came back here to settle down, had a couple of litter of pups, and here I am." Well, the guy nearly runs to the front yard, finds the guy and says, "I can't believe this. He's incredible. What do you want for him?" Guy's whittling on a stick, and he shrugs and says, "I don't know, $20. $20, the guy says. "Why would you sell a dog like that for $20? Dude says, "Because he's a liar. He's never been out of the yard." Thank you for laughing at that. That's one of my favorite jokes in the world. We're going to be looking at the final 3 commandments today, and one of them is about lying, but we're going to get to that one a little bit later. You know, the first 4 commandments we said have to do with our vertical relationship between us and God. I know you've heard this like 4 times now, but I hope you'll remember it. The other 6 seem to have more to do with our horizontal relationships, men and women to men and women. The final 3 begins with this one: "Thou shalt not steal." I'd say probably 90% of us or more have stolen something, though we don't want to call it that. And when we were a kid, maybe candy from a grocery store or a quarter from your mother's purse. Or some of us graduated to bigger things, a tape or a CD or money from your friend's car or maybe even from the cash register at work. Maybe you took some supplies from work that weren't yours for the taking. If you've ever cheated the IRS or kept quiet about a bank statement, an error in your favor, or even gotten too much change from a business transaction and kept it, you've stolen something. Now, stealing is a huge problem in the retail industry. I don't know if you realize how big a problem it is. When you buy an item from a store, any item from any store, from an expensive department store to a convenience store, did you know that whether you realize it or not, you are paying anywhere from 5 to 25% more because of people who steal? Who do you think pays for shoplifted items? Who replaces the money when a crooked clerk pilfers the cash register? Who pays the salary of the security guard? Who pays for the security cameras and the anti-theft technology? That's all you. You pay for that. Think about it. Calculate how much you spend in brick and mortar stores in a year. An average of 15% of that amount would be returned to you every year if nobody ever broke the 8th commandment. That makes me angry enough. But if you've ever been the victim of theft, probably made you super mad. In 1985, Mary Bob and I were newlyweds living in Cincinnati, where she was basically putting me through college. All of a sudden, there was a rash of thefts from cars in the parking lot in the married student housing apartments that served the college. And it was only a matter of time before the two of us became victims. They broke into Mary Bob's 1972 Volkswagen Beetle. Apparently, not all thieves have high standards. They didn't get much, but we were added to the growing list of students who lost purses, radios, guitars, and tools to theft. And it just infuriated me, mostly because they damaged Mary Bob's car in the process. They apparently did not know on a Volkswagen Beetle the engine's in the back, and if you want to steal the radio, all you got to do is lift that front hood and snatch it out. Well, they broke into the car and tore her dash up trying to get it out. Never did get that part out. But we didn't have much to steal in the first place for them to break into her little car. It was the principle of the thing. We were working hard, me part-time, putting myself through college, she full-time, and they just walked in and took it. My next door neighbor and I had apartments that faced different parts of the parking lot, and we were determined to put an end to it. We agreed that we were going to keep as vigilant as we could. I'd watch this part of the parking lot when I could and always try to just take a look. He would watch the other side. And if either one of us saw anything, we agreed that when we tore out of the apartment, we would bang on the other one's door to let them know before we went down the steps. And one night it finally happened. I heard my door wham, wham, wham. Travis was a former active duty Marine, and he had arms like fire hydrants. He banged on my door, and we both gave chase. It was two thieves, and they split up, and he went after his, and I went after the other one. Now, mine juked me because I never could play football. Mine juked me, and he faked a turn. Now, by the time I could correct the turn, he'd put a land yacht of a station wagon between me and him, and I lost him. But I went up into the woods and I found him a few minutes later. He had disappeared and laid face down by a dumpster. And a nearby streetlight, this is all true, a nearby streetlight was just bright enough for me to see his shape. I called to Travis, and I told him, I said, hey, I lost my guy. I'm looking at him. I said, I lost my guy. I'll meet you back at the apartments. And then I just fell down with my knee in the small of his back. And I mean all of my weight, which was about 220 pounds back then. It's a wonder I didn't break the guy's back. Now, he was smaller than me, so I subdued him, and the police rolled up just a couple of minutes later. One of our wives had called, and they stuffed him in the back of a cruiser. There's a little postscript that I want to tell you about. While the cop was interviewing Travis and I, the thief was in the cruiser, and he was continually trying to yell something at the cop. Windows were up, and the frustrated officer listened to this guy screaming from the back of the cruiser, and finally he said, Hang on a minute. And he walks over to his cruiser and he opens the back door. We couldn't hear what the thief said, but the cop listened for a minute and said, "Bathroom? Where do you think you are, the Howard Johnsons?" And then he slammed the door. But it was the principle of the thing. And God's principle is work for what you want. Don't try to get something for nothing. That's God's principle. Proverbs 9:17 says, "Stolen water is sweet, but little do they know the dead are there. Her guests are in the depths of the grave." See, it's not that I'm just going to die without having that thing you stole from me. Chances are, in fact, in 6 months, I'll never think about it again, whatever it was you took. It's the principle of the thing. God has clearly said, under no circumstances should you take what isn't yours. If you want it, work for it. Years ago, a preacher told this true story. He had accepted a new ministry in an urban area, and it was only his second week. Catching a bus, he paid the fare, and the driver gave him his change. He didn't look at it, just walked to the back of the bus and found a seat. Putting the change in his pocket, he noticed that the driver gave him 25 cents too much. He started to return it, but he thought, I'll have to walk past all these people again and lose my seat and disturb the operator while he's driving. And it's only 25 cents. I mean, it's really not worth the effort. But as his stop approached, he felt funny about it. And so when he passed the driver, he handed him a quarter and he told him he'd received too much change. The driver smiled and said, "I go to your church sometimes. That was a test. I just wanted to see if Jesus was really real to you." He got off the bus feeling like he'd been gut punched. "My God," he said, "I almost sold Jesus for a quarter." The 9th commandment says, "Thou shalt not bear false witness." Well, if I missed you on that last one because you've never stolen anything, then chances are good I got you on this one. Because if you tell me you've never stolen anything, well, you're a liar. A little boy had a problem with lying. He lied all the time. If he failed to do his homework, he'd say it caught fire on the way to school. If he forgot to do his chores, he'd say there was an earthquake. His parents had warned him and threatened him and punished him, and nothing worked. Well, one hot summer day, the neighbor decided to cool his dog off. He decided to cut all the hair off their big collie dog. But just for fun, he left a big, thick ring of fur around the dog's neck. The little boy saw the dog and he came screaming into the house, "Lion in the yard! There's a lion in the yard!" And that was it. His father said, "Young man, I want you to go straight to your room and pray about lying, and don't you come out until you feel like God has spoken to you." The little boy went up to his room and he stayed up there a long time. Finally, his father heard his bedroom door open. His father called up the steps. "Did you pray about lying?" "Yes, sir." "Did God speak to you?" "Yes, sir." "What did God say?" The little boy said, "God said not to worry about it because first time he saw that dog, he thought it was a lion too." Most lies, of course, are more intentional than that. And one of the most damaging things about lying is not only does it destroy our character and integrity, but it shatters any credibility you have with other people. Now, I'm not even going to go into it, but that goes to a whole new level when we say, I just was watching that offering video with you where it says, our mission is the Great Commission. You'll never get anywhere if you don't have any credibility with people. I had a professor who used to say, you never win those with whom you sin. If people know that you lie, and you will lie, and you have lied, then they will find it hard to trust you ever again. That may not be fair, but I'm just telling you it's the truth. They've lost faith in you. And it doesn't take habitual lies over and over again to destroy your reputation. Young people, I'm going to tell you something. If just one adult catches you in a bold-faced, intentional lie, from then on, you're a liar, period. And it's going to be hard to break that idea that the adults have of you. Husbands, go ahead and lie to your wife. Get caught just once. And it'll be a long time before she doesn't regularly suspect every time she looks at you that you might be lying to her. Two old country boys were talking, and one of them had been down to the county jail where he had seen the first lie detector machine in that part of the state. He'd never heard of such a thing. He's talking to his buddy, and he said, "Do you know they got something down to jail now that'll tell right when a fella is lying?" The other guy said, "Shucks, I married one of them." Liars aren't seen as very high up the food chain for most people. Employers, they might tolerate a lot of vices, but most employers won't put up with a liar. Am I right? Girlfriends don't keep liars around very long. It's not a light offense in court either. Judges will prosecute you. You can serve time if you lie in court. Here's something to consider. Most people aren't fond of liars because lying almost always goes hand in hand with other sins. If you will lie, you'll probably also cheat or steal if you think you can get away with it. I mean, think about it. If you're a thief, you pretty much got to lie to cover up the stealing. If you're going to cheat on your husband or your wife, you're going to lie to conceal it. You name the sin, most of the time, lying will accompany it. Now, the good news is that if you would decide right now to never, ever lie again, to obey the 9th commandment, the chances of you committing other sins would plummet. Because you have to tell the truth from now on. When the officer says, "Is that alcohol I smell on your breath?" You'd have to say, "Sure is. You can't drink all day if you don't start early." When the boss says, "Our profit margin seems to be shrinking," you'd have to say, "I doubt it. I've been sneaking a couple of $100 a week from the register. That's probably all it is." Lying is not a small offense. And if you get a reputation as a liar, it'll take you a long time to shake it, if you ever do. Not to mention all the scary things that the Bible says about lying. I've heard that most modern churches are big on grace, and I'm glad that they are, because we went through a period when I was a kid where you never heard about grace. But I've heard that most modern churches today are really big on grace, but not so big on sin, not so big on judgment, not so big on consequences, which is a big mistake. Because the Bible says things like Revelation 21:8, "The place of all liars will be in the fiery lake of burning sulfur." This is the second death. Then there's Proverbs 6:16. "There are 6 things the Lord hates, 7 that are detestable to him." Guess what number 2 is? A lying tongue. And it doesn't matter if you're a 6th grader lying about your homework or the website you've been looking at, or a U.S. senator in a deposition. Lying will almost always catch up with you. If you've ever told a lie that caught up with you, say, "That's me. That's me." And it'll hurt you. I'm telling you, it'll hurt you. And finally, we get to the 10th commandment. And frankly, it's really a little anticlimactic. Because the 10th commandment says, "Thou shalt not covet." Now, covet is not a word that most of us use in everyday conversation. It means to crave or have an unhealthy desire for. I would use that word to describe my relationship with Twinkies. It's connected with jealousy. You want that river house you saw. You want that fat bank account your cousin has. Did I hear correctly this past week? And I'm not sure, it might have been a scam thing or a lie. But did I hear recently correctly that a lottery ticket worth something like $368 million was sold at the little gas station in Burgess. Is that true? Wow. You guys that were in Mexico, I'm sorry. You might covet that ticket. They hadn't been claimed yet, I understand. If it's one of y'all, don't forget to tithe. Might be your friend's wife. But generally, it's a powerful desire for something that doesn't belong to you. That's what coveting is. Powerful desire for something that doesn't belong to you. Covetousness, while not healthy, seems a little bit inconsequential, doesn't it? Insignificant. It's kind of a lightweight vice in the company of some pretty heavyweight sins in the other 9 commandments, isn't it? But maybe coveting is a sin that points to a deeper problem. I heard a person say one time that if you really want to be like God and you really want to follow God's example, then forgive somebody. He said, you're never closer to God than when you're forgiving somebody. If you want to be like Satan, then covet something that's not yours. And there's a reason they say that. The Bible says that the reason that the devil was flung out of heaven was because he wanted God's position. He coveted, he was a beautiful angel, the Bible says, but he coveted God's power and God's glory, and he wanted to stage a revolt. He wanted to usurp that power and authority. He was coveting God's position. He wanted people to worship him and be awed by his power. So he turned on God and he challenged his power. And of course he lost. And when he lost, in an attempt to get back at God, now I want you to think about this. Since he couldn't hurt the Almighty, he hatched a plan to hurt his children. If you're a mom or dad here today, I could probably get up in your face and call you all kind of names, and you could walk away. But if I start talking about your kids, oh, there's going to be some spit flying. Satan said, if I can't hurt him, I'll make his kids suffer. Sounds about right. Sounds like a plan. Well, that led to Eve's sin. That in turn led to Adam's sin, which brought us suffering and death, and in the worst case, an eternity in hell. Now, knowing all of that, God says in the 10th commandment, thou shalt not covet. Maybe it's not so lightweight after all. I know a man who, when he was just a little boy, was taught by his mother about how to avoid coveting what wasn't his. If he saw a friend that had something that he was jealous for example, if he said, I wish I had his bike, she'd correct him. She taught him to say instead, I wish I had a bike like that, and he had an even nicer one. That's kind of cool. Kind of a neat thing to teach your kids. I wish I had a bike like that, and he had an even better one. One reason that coveting other things is wrong is because it's just dumb. And it really is. It's just dumb. I mean, it doesn't change anything. Now, you might be inspired to work harder if you see something nice that you want, but just wishing you had it changes nothing. But also, no matter how much bigger and nicer your neighbor's house is, it's going to burn up the same instant yours does on the last day. That woman you saw on vacation might have caught your eye, But don't trade what you know for problems that you don't know. The balance in your cousin's savings account is going to be exactly the same as yours on the day God calls you both home. A man was dying, and he had lived a mean and selfish life. But he had married a sweet Christian girl when they were young. She was foolish enough and naive enough. She didn't know any better, and she thought she could change him, and she couldn't. This man constantly took advantage of her and took advantage of her honest, unselfish spirit. And when he became terminally ill, he made his wife promise that she would put all of his money in his coffin with him when he died, leaving her with virtually nothing. When he died, he had a huge, custom-made silver casket. And everybody in town wondered what his wife would do, because they all knew that she was a woman of her word. She was a faithful person, and she'd always kept her promises. She had a pure reputation, but they all wondered, what's she going to do? Upon his death, if she kept her word, she'd be penniless. Just before the funeral began, everyone was asked to leave the room except for the woman and the funeral director. As the last person left the church, he looked over his shoulder and he saw the funeral director opening the casket. In the weeks following the funeral, the people in town were delighted to see the widow remodeling her house and tooling around in a brand new Mercedes. Her friend finally said to her, "So, did you keep your promise?" "Absolutely," said the woman. "I wrote him a check and put it in his pocket." The point is, coffins don't have glove compartments, and the pockets of funeral suits are nearly always empty. Your neighbor's gorgeous 18th century walnut armoire will make just as good kindling on Judgment Day as your little chest of drawers from IKEA. That coworker of yours has a 2024 Corvette Stingray that will one day melt and puddle up together with your primer-covered 1994 Mazda pickup truck. They're both going to be the same molten steel one day. That impressive physique that your neighbor got at Gold's Gym will make just as delicious worm food someday as the body you got at Krispy Kreme. So why covet any of it? Now, I'm not saying don't have ambition to do better for yourself. I'd like to think I have that. I think most of you have that. I'm not saying don't have ambition to do better for yourself. I'm just saying, why covet any of it? It's all temporary. It's all temporary. Don't confuse covetousness with ambition. Ambition is good, but coveting, why bother? It's not going to get you anywhere except closer to Satan. It will make you a little more like him. So there you go. That's it. 10 commandments. We're done. 10 commandments designed to save you from heartache and protect you from harm. And they really do work. That's the crazy thing. They work. The first 4 designed to make our relationship with God right. And our relationships to each other become more enjoyable and better if we'll obey the last 6. But they exist also to make your journey on this big old spinning ball of dirt a lot more fun and satisfying. A couple of weeks ago, Mary Bob and I took a short vacation with one of our daughters and her family. And a month before we were to go, my daughter tried to rent a golf cart in the town we were going to, but there weren't any left to rent. And she was very disappointed, and I was disappointed, and so I thought, I'm going to give it a shot. I went over to River City Golf Carts in Tappahannock and asked them, could I rent a golf cart and take it somewhere else? And they treated me super nice, and they treated me right. And I was nervous about towing a golf cart. They're kind of tall, and they don't seem like they're built real, heavy duty like a car. I was nervous about towing a trailer with a golf cart over the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel. I visited my daughter and her husband when they lived on Chincoteague, and I went over that bridge tunnel a lot, and if the wind's blowing a little bit, it can really toss stuff around. But Cole, the guy at River City Golf Carts, Cole sat down with me and he gave me the 10 commandments of towing. I told him, I said, I'm a little nervous about it. He said, oh, don't worry about it. And he gave me the 10 commandments of towing, showed me how to load it, showed me how to secure it in the most efficient manner, and I had zero problems. Zero. Because somebody explained the rules to me. Not to make our trip more difficult and say, you got to obey these rules. No. Not to make our trip more difficult, not to limit our fun, but to maximize the chances of a stress-free vacation. However, once we arrived, I did not know the 10 commandments of golf cart usage in Cape Charles. And so on our next to last day, we came in from the beach to find a stinking ticket and a $50 fine. Apparently, it is a town ordinance in Cape Charles that if you bring your own golf cart to Cape Charles, you must take it to one of the golf cart places in Cape Charles and get it properly inspected before driving or parking it on their precious little streets. Now, once you do that, they'll give you a cute little red sticker that makes you all legal. I did not have that cute little red sticker because I had not bothered to learn the commandments of driving a non-Cape Charles rented golf cart in Cape Charles. And it is a shame that my name was nowhere on that golf cart, because now when the ticket is not paid, the fine will be even heavier on River City Golf Carts, whose name was plastered all over that thing. Relax, I'm kidding, I'm paying the ticket. But the point is, I messed up because I didn't know. I didn't know the commandments. I messed up because I didn't know, and I got in a little trouble for it, and it's going to cost me. Moses and the Jews could have done without the commandments, but then they wouldn't know how they might get hurt, and they wouldn't know how to maximize their time in God's favor. So 10 commandments, all given by the very finger of God on a desolate mountain to an 80-year-old stuttering fugitive outlaw who had himself committed murder. Arguably the greatest set of laws and the highest moral code the world has ever seen. And today they form the foundation of the greatest and fairest judicial system in history. And that's just how God is. Everything his finger touches has new significance and renewed relevance and lasting importance. And I'm here to tell you that he can do that for you today. You've heard his laws. Let him touch you and give you new significance and renewed relevance and lasting, blessed assurance. God bless you. Thank you.